Hello and welcome to POcast.com. This section is about understanding and learning about JSON. If you're hearing JSON for the first time, then no need to worry. I'll cover everything you need to know about JSON to build interface using SAP PO. The course topics are as below. I'll introduce you to JSON with couple of real-time examples and show how JSON has evolved. Next, we'll compare JSON with XML. Then I'll show you how the name of JSON has evolved from JavaScript object literals and what is the relationship. I'll write some HTML JavaScript code to demonstrate the example. You will then learn about the JSON syntax and rules. After you understand the syntax, you will learn the data types available in JSON to represent the data. I'll show example on each of the data types for you to understand clearly. Then you'll learn JSON arrays and JSON objects with lots of examples. Finally, I'll show you some real-time JSON samples from online and show you how to read them. I've also listed some of the exercise that you can do offline. So let's jump into the topic. Before going into the details of JSON, I would like to explain on how two systems can communicate with each other and what are the various options available today. Imagine scenario 1 where system A wants to communicate with system B. So let's say system A wants to send product information to system B. Then here are the various options that system A can follow. System A can pack the product information in a comma tab delimited file and then pass it over to system B. Or system A can use XML as well to send information to system B. XML today is basically most preferred, and as it is more readable and represent real-time scenario with markup language. Okay, so let me show scenario 2. Scenario 2, system A wants to save some data for future reference like configuration file or user settings. Then system A can use .ini files or .property files to save the configuration or the user settings of the system. Okay, so system store data or exchange data over the network with other systems, and we have seen different formats, like tab delimited, comma delimited, .ini, .property and XML files. Well, all these are data formats which are human readable, and they are used mostly to do data interchange between two systems, or a system can store its state into this file system. Well, all these data formats are human readable data interchange format that can be used to exchange data or store the data. So remember that there are these different formats available to exchange the message. So let's understand what is JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Well, that's the full form of the word JSON. And JSON is a lightweight, which means the size of the JSON is small. It's human readable, means once you see a JSON, pretty much you will try to able to read the JSON by yourself. And it is a data interchange format, means it is a data that is used to exchange between the two systems, like we have seen previously, like XML, tab delimiter, and CSV file. JSON is one more format that is used to exchange message between two systems. And the main purpose of JSON is to represent data and exchange that data over the network. But before we jump into details of JSON, let me show you a simple JSON file, and they'll walk you through the JSON file. Then let us understand whether how easy it is to read a JSON file. This is a sample JSON file, and this is how a JSON data is been represented, right? And without even describing what is this all about, I want to tell you that JSON is a human readable, we just look at the data and then you should able to predict how the data has been organized, right? The data is organized with some curly braces, and basically it is separated in a rows or separated with some column names, right? So but just looking at this data, you can identify what is all about. Well, this is all about product, right? It basically talking about some product descriptions here, right? I don't have to explain you what this is all about, but I just want to bring you the point that by just looking at the data, it's very easy in JSON to understand what the data is all about. And even just to walk you through of this JSON file, I want to show you that there's a product, there's a row, and then each row is basically one product. And then by looking at the name of it, the product is something to do with a phone, is trying to describe a phone, give a price, give availability and different colors of the phone. But the point here is it's very much readable, right? It's not like XML where if this data has been represented in XML, it's basically a very big file. Then you have to scroll through up and down to figure out what is all about. But just looking at the JSON is really very simple and easy to understand format. So we learned JSON, and then we have seen a JSON sample data, and JSON actually means JavaScript object notation. But why the name JSON and why it is related to JavaScript? And one more thing I want to clear, that JSON and JavaScript has no relationship. Then why JSON is called as JavaScript? Before we go into the detail, I want to tell you that JavaScript is a web browser scripting language. It's a client-side web browser scripting language, and JSON is basically a data interchange format. Or using JSON, we represent the data, we save the data using JSON in the JSON format, and then we exchange the data over the network, and it has no relationship with JavaScript. So always remember this, JSON and JavaScript are not same. Okay, then you might be confused why JSON is named as JavaScript. Well, there's a concept in JavaScript called as JavaScript object literals, and this JavaScript object literals is similar to JSON format. So I'll show you an example. What is this JavaScript object literal means? Basically, JavaScript object literals is nothing but the way objects are defined in JavaScript is similar to the JSON format. Means the structure that is used to define objects in JavaScript is a similar notation how JSON is being defined, right? That's why the name is being taken from JavaScript object literals, but JSON and JavaScript has no relationship. JavaScript is purely a client-side scripting language, and JSON is a data interchange format. So let me show you an example of how JavaScript object literal looks like. Where I have a separate section, we will write this code, we will execute this code, then I will walk you through what are the details of it. But the one that I've highlighted here is basically a HTML file. Right, in the HTML file there's a JavaScript section where you can write the client-side scripting, and in that scripting I've highlighted how an object is being defined in JavaScript. So if you say var, that's a variable called product, then you define some variables in it like product ID some value, product name some value, product price some value, and then how you access it, you access it with the object name dot field name. It's like, you define a class and a member variables, and then you create an object of the class, and then you use a dot notation to access those variables. It's something similar concept, right? You have an object, then you use the class name to access the object's variable, right? This concept in JavaScript is called as JavaScript object literals, right? And this is the notation that you see here on the right hand side. The object notation, literal notation, is similar how the format is defined in JSON. That's why JSON is called as JavaScript object notation. It's the same notation how objects are defined in JavaScript, is the same notation how JSONs are defined. That's why the name came from. But there's a separate section, we will write this code, we will execute this code, and then we'll play around with it. There I'll give you more details about it. So let me summarize this introduction to JSON section. So what is JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript object notation, and JSON is a data format, right? Always remember this keyword. When someone asks you what is JSON, just give this answer. JSON is a data format, right? It's a data format like XML, it's a data format like CSV, like tab delimiter. This is one more data format. The main purpose of JSON is to exchange or store information. So you store the data in the JSON and then you exchange over the internet. So we have seen JSON examples. Basically it is very easy to read, and mostly it is human readable format, and any programming language can read JSON because there's no restriction in JSON that it should be read in a similar manner. Like in XML you use DOM parsers or SAC parsers to read the XMLs, where JSON doesn't have such kind of restrictions. Anybody can just use some libraries to read the JSON file. And the good news is that popular programming language like Java, .NET, Python, they already provide some predefined libraries in those native languages to read JSON files. So that basically shows how it is very popular in the programming language as well, and how it is very much adopted in this industry. And in JSON, everything you write is text based. There's nothing called inserting an image, inserting an attachment, no fancy stuff. It's very simple text based data that you basically write in JSON and then you exchange over to a system. Okay, that's basically about JSON. Next we will learn what is the difference between JSON versus XML.